Hello and welcome to The Next Step. My name is Glenn Maurer. I'm the host of the show today. And our guest is going to be William Y. Hyde. William is an actor, carpenter, a set designer, activist in the Occupy movement. And William and his friends hold a regular show called Radio Occupy on KCSB, which you can listen to and find his program and many interviews he's done and his friends. And I think it's worth attending to. So we should have that information on the screen. And those of you who are, I think would be well served to go on to the KCSB website and look at these shows. William was a previous guest on this show when we did discuss the Occupy movement, and I enjoyed that. And you can find that show and other shows that we have done in the past by Googling the Next Step TVSB, either YouTube or Ustream, and find the show that I did with William and other shows that we have done over the last few years on internet streaming. Welcome to the show, William.
Thank you.
We're going to discuss something that has been in the news much nationally and to a lesser degree locally, the militarization of police agencies.
Yeah.
By this we refer to the willingness of the Department of Defense to give surplus military gear, which is designed for wars and places of occupation by American military, to local police agencies, which are supposed to be enforcing the laws of the nation, of the state and the city and the county, not international war. According to the LA Times, over $5.4 billion of such equipment has been distributed to 8,000 local agencies in the last few years. What's wrong with this, or what concerns you about this, William?
Well, the program that you referenced, which is the Pentagon to Police Program 1033, was started in the 1990s, 93, 94. And it was essentially an anti-drug program where the military would have its surplus, leftover jeeps, leftover stuff, and they would give it to border states, essentially, mostly along the southern border, and to local coast guards and things like that in order to combat the importation of illegal drugs. With the advent of 9/11, September 11th, 2001, the program is exploded, and the Pentagon is now handing out like candy shop. You literally just write the Pentagon and say, what do you got? And then they say, well, we've got this list of stuff, and what do you want? And so you've got little towns out there getting grenade launchers and MRAPs and Bearcats and bears and laser cannons and assault equipment beyond belief. Well, you mentioned this statistic, 5 billion. The sources that I have say that since 9/11, the program has given out over $34 billion.
It's a little confusing about how they calculate that.
Yeah, but anyway, the thing that frightens me the most about this thing is that we have county sheriffs that are just gathering equipment like crazy.
Well, let's talk about that. You mentioned that they're giving this to jurisdictions all across America.
All across.
And places you see odd things with equipment completely inappropriate, scuba equipment to cities.
Well, I love to share this story. I was born and raised in Nebraska, and a couple of hours away is Lake McConaughey, one of the largest recreational and irrigation lakes ever made. It's about 24 miles long. And they now have a PT boat with torpedo on it floating in the lake.
To protect them from
terrorism.
Yeah, and as I think we've mentioned before, that PT boat is a bigger threat to the lake than any other weapon.
Absolutely.
But anyway, going back to our local interest, it's remarkable, Santa Barbara County.
Yeah.
It turns out, when you look at the data that's available, Santa Barbara County is one of the largest recipients of all this largesse, this military largesse.
Yeah, that's the most.
It's stunning. We have a county of 400,000 people. And the Santa Barbara Sheriff, in particular the Sheriff, other jurisdictions in the county have gotten something, but nothing compared to what the Sheriff has gotten. So you can go onto the New York Times website, and there's an interactive map, which folks might want to do, and you can look at counties all over the nation. It's a really fun thing to do, and you can find out who got money and who got it where. But in the per capita list of, if you just said 400,000 people and how much money did they get per person. Santa Barbara County, and here's a chart showing this. Santa Barbara County is by far the grandest, largest per capita recipient. There is a chart showing military hardware acquired per 100,000 residents and over $1 million per 100,000 persons in Santa Barbara County. Orange County next to it is, I don't even know what that number is, somewhere less than 50,000. San Diego County, Los Angeles County, El Paso, down by the border, when you mentioned the drug wars and all the problems they've had along the border, and then it goes along. New York City is almost, you can't even see it, and New Orleans, Cook County, which is Chicago, certainly much more urban and dangerous place than County of Santa Barbara. But there's an example of what has happened, and the question is, why is the Santa Barbara Sheriff's Office so anxious and acquisitive for this material?
That's a really good question, and I don't know why. Why does Sheriff Bill Brown, need 123 assault rifles? I mean, in 2014, based on New York Times investigation, and they, through the Freedom of Information Act, got the Pentagon to release just the 1 year expenditures. And I've taken the liberty of printing up just Santa Barbara County. This is 52 pages of single stuff.
Small print.
Small print, Helvetica. And, before we started today, I was just sort of rifling through this thing, and, it's body bags, dozens of body bags, body armor, pieces of pistols. And of course, the big items are, you've got laser cannons, long-distance sonic cannons, surgical field kits, hospital tents, bayonets, and the three armored vehicles, one of them being the Bear.
We'll get to some of these in a moment, but so let's look at. We have an Air Force that's the Sheriff Department is building a Santa Barbara Sheriff's Air Force.
Is.
There's a picture, I think, of one of the helicopters that they got. If we get a chance to show that, they have now. There it is. That's a smaller, I think, of the couple of helicopters they have. There's at one point apparently they were interested in getting a thing called the Sea King. In November of last year, they apparently made a request for that, but that sort of disappeared along the way, which was even bigger than this. But they will have 5 helicopters, at least 2 of them being these type of Huey combat. This holds 14, 15 people. It's worth about $900 and some thousand, and the Santa Barbara Sheriff Department has glommed onto a couple of them, I think. They have 5 helicopters in their Air Corps right now, and some fixed-wing aircraft. And then they've also went after vehicles. We have a picture here, I think, of the Bearcat that they have acquired, which is a what they call MRAP vehicle. MRAP vehicle being mine-resistant, anti-personnel or something like that.
Yeah, anti-personnel, right.
And these are again $900,000 vehicles. They've got this one, which is the smaller, if you will, of the 2 that they acquired. One is the Bear. This is the Bearcat, and the other one's the
Bear.
This is the Bear, and that's the Bearcat. It's the other one, which is even more onerous looking. It looks like something out of the South Africa war against apartheid, on behalf of apartheid back then. And these are seriously expensive vehicles to maintain and handle, and what function they have in a rural suburban county like Santa Barbara is a hard one to answer.
I don't know. One of the vehicles, the largest helicopter that he's got is, this is the information I got was from the California Emergency Office, which released this a year ago. It was the UH-1N Twin Huey. It's a Bell Twin Huey. It's one pilot, 14 passengers. It was used by the Marines as an assault vehicle.
That's what I think we have on the screen.
And then the Navy, they actually, Brown got his from the Navy, and the Navy used it for us as an assault vehicle on missile sites. Gosh, I don't know about what missile sites we've got in Santa Barbara.
Okay, and Sheriff Brown's been asked about some of these things, and his answers have been a bit disingenuous, I think, at best.
Oh, I couldn't agree more.
In sort of a double talk, he says, concerns about the militarization of police appear to be somewhat misguided and misinformed. Okay, your questions are misguided and misinformed. That's a nice way to start about people who want to ask what the sheriff is doing with all this gear.
Why do you have an Air Force?
Yeah, that's a misinformed question. Okay. He says, equipment obtained under the 1033 program allow first responders to utilize modern technology in our public safety effort. I don't know what he said there.
Yeah.
This is necessary because we live in a changing world. Again, I don't know what he says there, but the implication there is that violence is right around the corner in Santa Barbara County.
Yeah, just bubbling under the
Up under the
surface.
surface, and so we need these aggressive assault weapons. Remember, these are weapons designed for a war.
Oh, absolutely. These are assault weapons. These are assault rifles, and these are surgical field kits. These are hospital kits, tents. I mean, this guy could have won the Battle of Antietam.
His other quote, the other quote that he came up with on this, in light of what we were just saying about defensive and offensive, is that, and again, he turns this around in a strange way. He says, acknowledging the similarities between the military and the police, but noted that there were very distinct differences between the two. We are on a defensive versus an offensive role, the sheriff. And I agree. The sheriff probably should be in a more defensive role as a person who is to protect the
That's true.
And enforce the laws.
That's true.
The rules of engagement are much stricter. Yes, they are. So why again would you purchase these assault weapons, which are designed for the very purposes of assault, and not to comply with these more narrow rules?
So Glenn, let me ask you the question here. You and I have had these conversations before when we talk about the difference between a national defense force and a police force.
Right.
This guy's using the language of General Schwarzkopf when he says these things, changing times, offensive, defensive, things like that. That sounds to me like he's thinking more along the lines of a colonel or a general out in the battlefield.
Well, I think some of this, maybe we know that as he says, there's similarities between law enforcement agencies and the military. They both are disciplinary and authoritarian with hierarchical systems, and maybe they need that. And they also tend to employ some of the same people. In fact, ex-military are often involved in
law enforcement,
because of various hiring practices and whatnot. It makes sense. But we can't confuse the difference between an aggressive, assertive Department of War, which is what it is, not the Department of Defense, Department of War, which goes overseas and tries to conquer an enemy, and a Department of and the Homeland Police, which are there to protect and ensure the safety of the civilian population in our communities by enforcing the laws equitably and fairly against all. And there's this quote that I like, and it comes from not a particularly academic source, but I think it's good. Some screenwriter for Battlestar Galactica wrote it, but I think he caught it right, or she caught it right. There's a reason you separate military and the police. One fights the enemies of the state, the other serves and protects the people. When the military becomes both, then the enemies of the state tend to become the people. Mm-hmm. And that's ominous, but I think there's some truth to it. And this country knows this. We go back to the Revolutionary War when the British were housing their soldiers in the citizens' houses and domiciles. That was one of the bases for the objection to the British presence in the colonies, was that they were occupying force. Mm-hmm. And here we have that happening in a way with this. And there's this thing called a Posse Comitatus Act.
Right.
100 and some years ago, the Congress passed a law that says that the military, the federal government cannot use federal military personnel to enforce state laws. It's been around for years, and we don't even think too much about why that existed. I think there's a very strong argument that what's happening here by dispersal of this equipment and the inherent obligations of maintaining and using and staffing this equipment, that we're basically transferring federal military into local jurisdictions to do what the federal military would not be allowed to do.
Right.
The federal military is not allowed to enforce local laws, except in very odd and exceptional cases, riot and a few cases, but normally not. But by if you take and give them all the indicia of the military, of the real military, they become, in fact, a substitute for the military in the local communities.
Well, as you see more and more SWAT teams, they're showing up in houses in battle fatigues and riot gear. They look like an army. They don't look like your local police who comes in and knocks on the door and knows everything okay and you're doing all right. They're ramming down doors to serve subpoenas. Something's going on.
All across the country, too. It's not just locally.
No, this is happening all across America. And you also think, too, about the military-industrial complex, how much money it's making.
Yeah, I think this has been another issue that I'm very suspicious of. The military-industrial complex that Eisenhower warned us about, and we've been, he was so prescient. The idea that this combination of manufacturers of military goods and the Congress and the legislatures and the business community that lives off of this unholy three-way feeding frenzy will end up bending American policy, domestic policy, to its own survival. And historically, when the military got this weapons, they had to dispose of it by using it up, bombing, having a war, getting rid of it, or selling it off to some tin pot dictator in Nicaragua or someplace in the Philippines or some other part of the world. We just would give them our leftovers. And that way there was a pipeline. You could continue to manufacture guns and armaments, and it would have a way of dispersing out, and there was always employment. That may be drying up a little bit, and this is arguably another way of making sure that military-industrial machinery continues to produce.
Yeah. But you got to wonder about a guy like Sheriff Brown in the sense of what's his real motive? I mean, what's he really doing, and who's he thinking or he's pretending to protect us from with this kind of. This is equipment that you see in pictures of downtown Baghdad. This is not something you see in Santa Barbara, California, or in the North. San Ynez. I mean, what is it that I have, and as I'm getting more and more and watching this and collecting more information about it, I'm very frightened about it. It scares me. And it scares me that you have a fellow out there who literally has got himself an army.
In some of the material that was made available to me, and there's a comparison of the amount of material that was acquired from this 1033 program during Sheriff Bill Brown's tenure, which has been a couple terms, I think, and his predecessor. Almost nothing from the predecessor sheriff.
Right.
Made no effort. This program was there. Other jurisdictions. It's been there since '93. Other jurisdictions use it occasionally, and the previous sheriff used it occasionally, but it's almost nothing. Boom. Bill Brown comes into power in the election, and it looks like they must have had a staff dedicated to sit there and look at these printouts and see what they can grab, because the amount of material that he has acquired in his time has been so much greater than anything before.
And you've raised the question earlier, is that why isn't the Board of Supervisors asking him, what are you doing with this stuff, and how much is it costing us? You know what it costs to maintain 5 helicopters?
Well, one of the things that he got...
Assault vehicles?
Yeah, I agree. You and I hope the audience appreciates the work that you do not just have a helicopter. If this helicopter is ostensibly to be used for searching the forest for marijuana plots, as I think they feebly explained.
2 little passenger helicopter, a little search and rescue, you fly over.
You don't need a 16 passenger.
You don't need a 16 or 14 passenger.
If it's to be used for that, or if it's to be used for search and rescue, which it's totally inadequate for because it's so clumsy and big.
Yes, exactly.
But if it's been used for anything, it has to be then immediately available for emergency call. You have to say, we got a problem, we got a disaster, let's get somebody up there. So that means it has to be ready to fly now, and that means it has to be constantly maintained and serviced and protected and fueled and all those things.
Piloted.
piloted. I did see a civil service opening in the Sheriff's Department looking for helicopter pilots at the salary something like $90,000 a year, with benefits that would be at least $160,000, $170,000 per pilot. To keep these, and you'd have to have, I don't know how many pilots you need, but remember that you need them either on call, which means they're getting paid for that.
Got at least 2 of them.
Yeah, and all that. So anyway, these are expensive processes. They need to be kept, like we say, mechanically up to date. I heard once that for every pilot in the Air Force, there were 10 or 11 ground personnel supporting that pilot.
Makes sense.
It makes sense. So again, the Sheriff's Department, maybe that's all this is just a way of increasing the size of the kingdom of the Sheriff's Department. But it is an expensive undertaking for the rest of us. And yes, I am concerned that the Board of Supervisors does not seem to be paying attention to this expansion. You know, the sheriff can go out and grab all the, he even grabbed one jet engine apparently. Unattached jet airplane engine that was maybe laying in a closet somewhere, and I don't even know if it could be used by anything that Santa Barbara has.
Unbelievable.
Or maybe has a goal to acquire the rest of that plane.
Or a hobby. A new hobby.
Jet boat or something.
Yeah.
But anyway, all this saying that he is building, just as with the new jails that he's built, he is building an empire and a staff, a larger and larger and larger expensive staff that the rest of us taxpayers in the county has to pay for. And while he has some income that's his own, quite departmentally owned, there is other discretionary income that the Board of Supervisors has purse strings control over, and it bothers me that they do not seem to be willing to take this on. I know they had a couple little flare-ups about some helicopter grant they got for the maintenance of a helicopter that they didn't even want. But he got a charitable contribution, quote unquote, to do this. So there may be some things behind the scene that we don't see. But on its surface, he seems to be getting away with expanding and growing the size of the Sheriff's Department excessively.
Well, on his website, I think he had over 600 employees, and is expanding all the time. He doesn't list his budget. He doesn't show his budget online, whereas the Santa Barbara Police does. So I wonder about the transparency there, and the size of this thing. I think that people should be very concerned. You don't give somebody a bunch of equipment like this, and he's got guys in there itching to use it. It frightens me to think of a bear driving into a...
By the bear, you mean this vehicle?
This vehicle.
Yeah, can we get that back on the screen maybe when we get a chance?
But the idea of he's going to clamp down on the party in Isla Vista, so let's put a machine gun turret, which, by the way, the bear and the Bearcat are equipped with
There's the bear.
machine gun turrets.
Now that's the milder version.
Yes.
You know, that's the small version. It doesn't have a
Yes.
turret on the top. The bigger one...
But imagine driving that down into Isla Vista to quell the Flotillezilla
and I think
party.
that's the point we need to spend some time on before we finish here, is the polarization this is created. We saw it in Ferguson.
Yes, we did.
see it around the country as this militarization nationwide has occurred. You see more and more phalanxes of the police rolling out in black gear with face masks and helmets and shields and gloves and truncheons and armored vests and all of this stuff. And they look nothing like but stormtroopers, sort of.
Yeah, they're not there to serve and protect. They're there to...
Even if they were justified in what they were doing and the community needed this type of intervention, the polarizing effect that there's a black and white line between the police and the rest of the community, and you can't reason with them. There's no dialogue. There's no conversation across the rifles with flowers in the barrels of the gun.
Those days are over.
Those days are over. And so anybody who's been on the other side of that and seen this phalanx, this, I don't know another word, this onrushing, militarized, coordinated, mechanical effort coming at you, has to be panicked. And their right to assemble and to have a public forum and to express their views about what would happen in their community is substantially taken away, and then, of course, some will react violently.
Well, I have talked to other reporters who've tried to interview Bill Brown, and he gets very defensive on this subject.
Yeah.
And a year ago, Nick Welsh from The Independent had an article about a meeting where Brown didn't go to it, but his under deputy went to it. I think his name is Peterson or Patterson. And one of the county supervisors jokingly said, are you happy to see me, or is that a grenade launcher in your pocket? I don't think it's a joking matter, and it frightens me. It frightens me that you have a guy out there that is collecting millions and millions of dollars of these are assault.
Yeah. Well, there's a sonic cannon. I'm not even sure what that is. A laser cannon. I'm not sure what that is. Body bags.
Hundreds of assault rifles, pistols,
lots of ammunition.
Thousands and thousands of rounds of ammunition. I mean, I jokingly at the beginning, we were kind of scanning this thing. We were looking at 240 pairs of restraining straps.
Those are voluntary restraining straps.
Involuntary straps,
yeah,
yes.
Involuntary straps.
You know, why? Why do you need that?
Okay, a couple things we should touch on real quickly before we're almost over, but
Yeah.
there is, President Obama did react to a bit of this after all these military exercises and military ostentation that we saw from Baltimore to Ferguson to other
Yeah.
places, and is apparently set limits on what can be given in the future, and maybe attempting to recall some of the materials that were given out earlier. And I understand a few things that the Santa Barbara Sheriff got might be recallable. But I'm not sure about
Well,
that.
that'd be nice. You know, the city of Davis sent stuff back.
Well, they had a bearcat up there, or a bear, and the police loved it, and the city council in Davis, which was apparently has impact on the university police, which had this equipment, said send it back, and they did. So citizens can, have some impact in this. But it's just so quietly. It's being done so quietly behind the
Yes.
scenes, and nobody can
Yes.
see it. If you go back and look at that chart that we had to start, we haven't got time perhaps now, but the amount of per capita acquisition for Santa Barbara County is so outrageous. There it is, so outrageously greater than any other jurisdiction. One has to wonder what is going on here. Is it just boys and their toys, or is it that there is some plan to use of this? And of course, there's always that argument that if you got it, you'll use it.
You'll use it, yeah.
So William, thank you for being here.
Thank you, Glenn, for having me again. I very much enjoy this, and I do ask that your viewers check us out at radiooccupy.net and listen to our shows, or go to kcsb.org. And thanks for having me.
Yeah, you guys do good work out there on the Radio Occupy. And again, our shows are available on YouTube and Ustream at The Next Step TVSB. Again, I want to thank to Juanita and Ali in the control room there directing this show, and to TVSB, the studios, for making the space available to us, on letting us try to exercise community participation and thoughtfulness. And I would hope that people pay attention and do something.